The angry mob shouts pierced the dry Arizona night as young Luis Ramirez was shoved toward the flickering town sign of Rio Seco, his heart shattering under the weight of betrayal. "Get out and never come back," they yelled, rocks grazing his shoulders while Vincent stood silent in the shadows, his eyes avoiding Louis' pleading gaze. That was 8 years ago. Now in the blistering heat of a record drought, Rio Seco was dying. The Colorado River allocation had dried to a trickle, farms lay cracked and barren, and the main aquifer that had sustained the town for generations was nothing but dust and memories. Families hoarded what little bottled water remained, elderly residents were hospitalized with dehydration, and whispers of evacuation grew louder each day. Vincent Hale, now the town's water resources coordinator, stared at the empty reservoir from his truck, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His marriage to Sarah was a hollow shell maintained for appearances under his father's watchful eye as the local church leader. Their son, little Tommy, asked every night why the taps no longer worked. Vincent knew there was only one person who might save them, the man he had loved and abandoned. With trembling fingers, he dialed the number he had kept hidden in his phone for years. In San Francisco, Luis Ramirez's phone buzzed on his sleek desk overlooking the bay. As head of Aquacore Innovations, he had built a reputation as the go-to expert for water crises in arid zones. His latest project, a revolutionary system that combined advanced seismic imaging with sustainable deep well extraction and atmospheric moisture capture, was set to transform how the Southwest survived climate change. But when he saw the area code from Arizona, his blood ran cold. "Luis, it's Vincent. We need your help. The town is out of water. People are suffering bad." The voice from the past hit like a physical blow. Luis stood up, pacing his office. Memories flooded back, stolen kisses behind the old water tower under the vast desert sky, whispered promises of a future together, then the night everything burned. Vincent's denial, the public humiliation, his father's sermon, calling him a sinner, the expulsion. "You have some nerve calling me Luis," said, his voice steady, but laced with pain. "After what you did, after you let him drive me out like a criminal, just because I loved you." Vincent's breath caught. "I know. God, I know what I did. But this isn't about us. Kids are getting sick. The wells are dry. Your tech, I've read about it. You are the only one who understands this aquifer, like no one else." Luis laughed bitterly. "So now I'm useful when the town that hated me for who I am is desperate. Suddenly, I have the answers." He hung up, but the call left him shaken. That night, Luis couldn't sleep. He thought of his mother Maria, still in Rio Seco, her letters he never answered after she chose the town over him. His sister Elena had tried to bridge the gap, but the wounds were too deep. Helping them meant facing everything he had fled. Refusing meant letting innocents suffer for the sins of the bigots. The moral weight pressed on him like the desert sun. He walked to his window, staring at the city lights, wondering if the boy who had been driven out still owed anything to the place that had broken him. The next morning, his sister called, her voice urgent. "Luis' mom is sick. The dehydration is bad. The town is falling apart. Please at least come and see what you can do. It's not for them, it's for her. For us." Luis closed his eyes, the decision forming against his will. "Okay. They'll come, but only for a week. Tell Vincent to prepare the data. But don't expect miracles or forgiveness." As he packed his bags, the internal storm raged. Every mile he drove toward Rio Seco brought back the pain, the love, the loss. When he crossed the state line, the heat hit him like an old enemy. The landscape was worse than he imagined, fields of dust where cotton once grew, abandoned cars on the side of the road, and the air thick with the smell of dry earth. He pulled into the town limits, the sign faded and worn. The gas station where he stopped for fuel had a line of people with empty jugs arguing over the last delivery. Luis paid and drove on, his heart pounding, as he headed to the community center where Vincent had arranged to meet. Vincent was waiting outside, his face lined with worry and years of hidden regret. He looked the same yet different, the boyish charm replaced by a tired resignation. Luis stepped out of the car, the Arizona sun beating down on them both. The air between them crackled with unspoken history. "Thank you for coming," Vincent said, his voice low. "I didn't know who else to turn to." Luis nodded, curtly keeping his distance. "Show me the reports. Let's see how bad it is." As they walked inside, Luis noticed the stares from passers-by, some cold, some desperate. The meeting room was filled with maps and charts showing the grim reality. The main well had collapsed months ago, the backup sources contaminated. Vincent explained the details, his expertise as coordinator clear but limited. Luis listened, absorbing the data, his mind already calculating the possibilities with his aquacore system. The deep aquifer was there, he knew from his youth explorations, but tapping it required precision to avoid collapse and contamination. It would take equipment he could arrange, but the risk was high if not done right. As the discussion deepened, Vincent's hand brushed Lewis on the table, a spark that both ignored but neither forgot. The day wore on with planning and arguments. The mayor arrived skeptical but desperate. "We don't like it, but we need you, Ramirez. Just get it done and get out." Luis felt the old anger rise but pushed it down. His choice to come was already a compromise, a gamble on whether saving lives was worth the personal cost. As evening fell, he checked into the only motel, the owner eyeing him warily. Alone in the room, Luis sat on the bed, the weight of the decision heavy. He had the key, the technology, the knowledge to bring water back to this place. But at what price? To his heart, his identity, his peace. The first step was taken, the confrontation with his past just beginning, and the town's fate hung in the balance with his own soul. He lay awake long into the night, replaying the banishment, the way Vincent had turned away that night, the way his own father had looked at him with disgust, and the way his mother had stood silent, tears streaming, but doing nothing to stop it. Now here he was back in the same town, the same heat, the same people who had made his life hell. Could he really help them without losing himself all over again? The question burned in his chest as the first light of dawn crept through the curtains. He rose, dressed, and headed out, knowing that today the real work and the real pain would begin. Luis met Vincent at the old pump station on the edge of town, the morning sun already turning the air into a furnace. The place smelled of rust and desperation, the pipes dry and silent where water once flowed freely. Vincent spread out the geological maps, his hands shaking slightly as he pointed to the red zones marking the failed wells. "We have maybe 3 days before the hospital runs out completely," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Luis studied the charts, his trained eye spotting the fault lines he had mapped years ago, as a curious teen sneaking onto restricted land. The deep aquifer sat there untouched because the old methods couldn't reach it without risking the whole structure collapsing. His aquacore system could change that, but it required trust and resources the town might not give him. "You really think this will work?" Vincent asked, stepping closer, his shoulder brushing Lewis in the cramped space. The contact sent a jolt through both men, memories of stolen afternoons and hidden canyons flooding back. Luis pulled away, forcing his focus on the data. "It can if everyone follows my instructions exactly. No shortcuts, no interference. But first I need to see the site in person." They drove in Vincent's truck, the silence thick with everything unsaid. Along the way, they passed farms where cattle stood listless beside empty troughs and families gathered around barrels, collecting what little rain had fallen in a rare storm weeks ago. A woman recognized Luis and spat on the ground as they passed, her eyes full of old hatred. Luis kept his gaze straight ahead, but inside the wound reopened. "Why am I doing this?" he thought. "These people never changed. They still see me as the problem, not the solution." Vincent glanced over, his face etched with guilt. "I should have stood up for you back then. Every day I wish I had. My dad had me cornered, threatening to take everything, the church, the family name. I was young and scared, but I never stopped caring." Luis. The words hung between them, heavy with what-ifs. Luis wanted to believe him, wanted to reach out and bridge the years, but the betrayal was a wall too tall to climb in one conversation. At the drilling site, the ground was baked hard, fissures running like veins across the desert floor. Luis took samples, his mind racing through calculations, the pressure needed, the filtration setup, the recharge cycle to make the water sustainable long-term. Vincent watched him work, a mix of admiration and sorrow in his eyes. "You built something amazing out there, while I stayed here hiding, pretending." Luis wiped sweat from his brow, standing to face him. "Pretending? Like marrying Sarah and having a kid to keep up the image?" Vincent flinched but nodded. "It was the only way to survive here. But Tommy deserves better. I deserve better." The confession cracked something in Luis, the anger softening just a fraction into understanding. They worked side by side through the afternoon, marking spots for the initial bore. Townspeople gathered at a distance, whispering, some offering reluctant help with tools, others glaring. By dusk, the first test bore was underway, the sound of machinery cutting through the quiet, a small victory in a sea of doubt. Back at the community center, the mayor called a quick meeting, the room packed with faces Luis remembered from his youth. The discussion turned tense when an old rancher stood up pointing at Luis. "We all know what he is. How do we know he wants sabotage us out of spite?" Luis met the man's eyes steady. "Because unlike some people here, I don't let hate dictate my actions." The room fell silent, Vincent stepping forward to defend the plan, his voice gaining strength. "Luis is the expert. We follow his lead or we watch this town die." The mayor grudgingly agreed, but the undercurrent of resentment remained. That night, Luis sat with his mother in the small house. She still called home, her frail body propped up with pillows. She reached for his hand, tears in her eyes. "I was wrong to let them take you away, son. The fear was too much." Luis felt the years of resentment crack but not break. Forgiveness wasn't instant. It was a choice he wasn't sure he could make yet. Vincent called later, his voice tired from a long day. "Can we talk somewhere private?" "The old tower, maybe." Luis agreed, the pull of their shared past too strong to ignore. As he drove there, the stars overhead reminded him of nights when love felt possible. At the tower, Vincent waited, the moonlight softening his features. They talked for hours about the pain, the growth, the what could have been. No touches, no promises, just raw honesty that left both men exhausted but closer. Luis drove back to the motel knowing the collaboration was working, but the emotional cost was mounting. The town was watching every move, judging every decision. He held the key, but the lock was rusted with prejudice and his own guarded heart. The days ahead would test if he could turn the key without breaking. The second day dawned with a dust storm whipping across Rio Seco, forcing everyone indoors, but Luis insisted on continuing the site assessment. Vincent met him at the edge of the restricted zone, goggles and masks in hand, the wind howling like an angry spirit. They pushed forward, the equipment heavy in their hands as sand stung their skin. Luis explained the process step by step, how the seismic sensors would map the aquifer in real time, how the custom drill bit he had designed would penetrate without causing sinkholes. Vincent listened intently, his respect growing with every detail. "You always were the smart one," he said during a brief lull in the storm. "I was just the follower." Luis paused, his tool in hand. "Following got you a life here. I had to build mine from nothing." The conversation turned personal again, Vincent revealing the strain of his marriage, the way Sarah knew the truth but stayed for Tommy, and the family image. "I wake up every morning, hating the lie, Luis. But coming out now would tear everything apart, especially with a town in crisis." Luis felt a pang of empathy mixed with frustration. "So you choose safety again. I get it. But it costs you. It costs us." They finished the mapping by midday, the data confirming Lewis' theory the aquifer was viable, but time was critical. Back in town, the hospital called an emergency, the elderly patient showing signs of severe dehydration. Luis volunteered to help distribute his personal water supply from the truck, the act drawing a small crowd, some muttering, thanks, others turning away. His sister Elena pulled him aside later in the family kitchen, her eyes pleading. "Mom asked about you all night. She's proud of what you became, but she's scared you'll leave again without forgiving." Luis stirred his coffee, the steam rising like unresolved questions. "Forgiveness isn't free, Elena. They took my home, my love, my name in this town. Now they want my brain. What do I get in return?" She hugged him tight. "Maybe a chance to heal." That afternoon, the town council met again, the tension thicker than the dust outside. A rival contractor from the next county showed up offering a quick fix with surface wells, but Luis pointed out the flaws. The water would be temporary and contaminated. The contractor sneered. "At least I'm not the one the town kicked out for unnatural ways." Vincent slammed his fist on the table. "Enough. Luis is saving us." The room erupted in arguments, half the members backing the outsider for familiarity, the other half desperate enough to trust the outcast. Luis sat silent, his mind weighing the moral choice: help and endure the disrespect, or walk and let nature take its course. He chose to stay for now, presenting the full aquacore plan, the cost, the timeline, the risks. The mayor approved it grudgingly, the contract signed under duress. As the meeting ended, Vincent caught Luis' arm in the hallway. "You didn't have to defend the plan so hard. I saw the doubt in your eyes." Luis met his gaze, the connection electric. Doubt is what keeps me human, Vince. But action is what matters now. They spent the evening reviewing blueprints in Vincent's office, the close quarters forcing memories to surface. A shared laugh over an old map error broke the ice, leading to a quiet moment where Vincent admitted the nights he drove past Louis' old house hoping for a sign. Luis shared his own lonely successes in San Francisco, the awards that felt empty without someone to celebrate with. The conversation ended with a promise to keep it professional, but both knew the line was blurring. That night a power outage hit from a strain on the grid. Luis, lying in the dark, listening to the silence of a town holding its breath. He held the key in his mind and his files, but the price was climbing with every confrontation, every glance from Vincent, every reminder of the life stolen from him. The awakening was slow, the realization that saving the town might mean saving a part of himself he thought was lost forever. By the third day, the equipment arrived, trucks rumbling into Rio Seco like a small army, the townspeople lining the streets in a mix of hope and suspicion. Luis directed the setup, the drill rig positioned exactly where his data indicated the sweet spot. Vincent worked beside him, handing tools, coordinating with the local crew, his presence a steady anchor amid the chaos. The heat was relentless, sweat soaking their shirts as they secured the first casing. A group of teenagers watched from afar, one shouting an insult before his friends pulled him away. Luis ignored it, focusing on the pressure gauges, but inside the words echoed the old pain. Why do I care what they think, he wondered. Because deep down this is still home, the place where I learned to love and to hurt. Vincent noticed the tension and pulled him aside during a break. Don't let them get to you. You're doing more for this town than anyone ever has. Luis wiped his face with a rag, his eyes meeting Vincent's. It's not them, it's us. Every time we stand close, I remember what they took. What you let them take. Vincent looked away, the guilt raw. I was a coward. But I'm trying to change. For Tommy. For me. For you, if you'll let me. The words landed like rain on dry ground, Luis feeling a shift but not ready to name it. They returned to work, the drill biting into the earth, the first signs of progress, a small cheer from the crew when water traces appeared in the samples. Word spread quickly, drawing more onlookers, some offering water bottles in gratitude, others muttering about divine punishment for past sins. Louis' mother visited the site in a wheelchair, Elena, pushing her, the old woman reaching for Louis' hand. You always had the vision, son. Don't lose it now. He squeezed back the gesture, a small bridge over the chasm. Later that evening, the sabotage happened. Someone had tampered with the generator during the night shift, the fuel line cut clean. Luis discovered it at dawn, fury rising as he realized the delay could cost precious hours. Vincent arrived to help investigate, his face pale. This is someone from town. Someone who doesn't want you to succeed. They questioned the crew, no answers, but the message was clear. Prejudice ran deep. Luis faced the moral dilemma in the quiet of the pump house. Should he quit now, call it too risky, or push on proving the haters wrong? He chose to push the replacement parts, ordered the work continuing under guard. Vincent stayed late that night, the two men sharing a simple meal of sandwiches and warm soda, the conversation turning to dreams. Luis described his life in the city, the freedom to be open, the loneliness that followed. Vincent spoke of Tommy, the joy that kept him going, the fear that kept him silent. A moment of closeness followed, hands almost touching before Luis pulled back. We can't go there, Vince. Not until the town changes. Not until I know it's real. Vincent nodded, understanding, but the hurt was evident. The next morning, the drill resumed, the tension in the air thicker than the dust. A town meeting turned heated when the contractor returned, pushing for his alternative, Luis standing his ground with facts and logic. The vote went in his favor, but barely, the division clear. As the sun set, Luis walked the dry riverbed alone, reflecting on the trade-offs. Every foot of progress came with a piece of his peace. Vincent joined him, the sunset painting the sky in oranges and pinks. They stood in silence, the bond strengthening through shared struggle. Luis felt the awakening begin, the idea that forgiveness might not be weakness but strength. But the price was still being calculated, one confrontation at a time. The well was deepening, the water closer, but the hearts in Rio Seco remained divided, and his own was no exception. The drill hit a snag on day, for hard rock layers slowing progress to a crawl, the crew working in shifts under the unrelenting sun. Luis adjusted the bit design on the spot, his hands covered in grease as he explained the changes to Vincent. The system is holding, but we need to reinforce the casing or risk a cave-in. Vincent nodded, relaying the orders, his leadership growing under the pressure. The town felt the strained two lines at the distribution point, longer fights breaking out over ration bottles. Luis witnessed one such clash, a father pleading for extra for his sick child, the volunteer turning him away, until Luis intervened, handing over his own supply. The father thanked him, awkwardly avoiding eye contact, the prejudice lingering like the dust. Later, Vincent found him at the site, the exhaustion showing in both. "You didn't have to give yours, Luis. You're already giving everything." Luis shrugged, the act a small decision in a sea of big ones. It's what anyone should do. But not everyone does. They worked through the night, the generator humming steadily, the sabotage attempt fresh in mind. A quiet moment came when the sensors showed a promising signal, the aquifer responding. Vincent clapped Luis on the back, the touch lingering a second too long. "This could work. You could save us all." Luis turned the closeness, forcing a conversation they had avoided. "Saving the town is one thing. Saving what we had is another. You have a family, Vince. I have a life far from here. What are we doing?" Vincent's eyes filled with conflict. "I'm tired of hiding. Sarah and I talked. She knows it's over in every way that matters. Tommy needs a father who is honest. I need to be honest." The confession hung between them, the possibility of a second chance real but fraught. Before they could say more, call came the hospital, reporting another dehydration case, an old friend of Lewis' family. They rushed there, Luis using his knowledge to advise on conservation, the doctor listening with new respect. The visit stirred more memories, his mother waiting in the lobby, her condition stable but fragile. She pulled him close, whispering, "Don't let the past steal your future, son." Luis left with a heavier heart, the internal battle raging between resentment and compassion. The next day brought a breakthrough, the drill breaking through to the first usable water samples, pure enough after filtration to test. The town gathered for the announcement, the mood mixed cheers from some, boos from others. The contractor tried one last push, claiming the water was tainted, but Luis' tests proved him wrong, the evidence undeniable. Vincent stood beside Luis in the crowd, his hand brushing his in support, the gesture noticed by many. Backlash came, quick whispers of sin and curse, but the desperation won out. That evening, Luis and Vincent met at the tower again, the stars witness to their talk. Vincent opened up about the pressure from his father, the threats, the isolation. Luis shared the nights in San Francisco, wondering if love was worth the risk again. The conversation ended with a promise to see the project through no matter the personal cost. As Luis drove back, the awakening deepened, the realization that his choices were shaping not just the town's future, but his own. The well was flowing, the hope rising, but the confrontations were far from over, the betrayal still lurking in the shadows of prejudice and fear. Day 5 brought the first real flow from the test, while the water clear and cool, a miracle in the desert that spread news like wildfire. Luis monitored the output, his team adjusting the recharge lines to ensure sustainability. Vincent coordinated the distribution, the lines forming early, the gratitude tangible for most. But not all. A group of holdouts led by the old rancher gathered at the site, demanding proof the water was safe, the undercurrent of doubt fueled by old biases. Luis demonstrated the filtration process step by step, his patience wearing thin. "This isn't magic, it's science. The same science you all benefit from every day." The rancher grumbled but backed down, the evidence too strong. Later, a private betrayal surfaced when Lewis' old school friend, now a council member, pulled him aside, admitting he had tipped off the contractor about the generator sabotage out of fear of change. "I thought it was for the best, Luis. The town isn't ready for someone like you to be the hero." Luis felt the knife twist, but chose not to expose him immediately, the moral dilemma clear, revenge or progress. He confronted Vincent instead, the two walking the fields, the conversation raw. "How many more will stab me in the back before this is over?" Vincent stopped, turning to face him. "I want. Not again. I've told my father the truth about us, about me. He threatened to cut me off, but I stood my ground. For Tommy. For you." The revelation shifted something in Luis, the trade-off Vincent made real and costly. They embraced briefly, the contact a promise of more, the emotion raw and healing. The town felt the shift, two small groups discussing the changes, the water bringing not just life but questions about acceptance. A fight broke out at the distribution point, a bigot shoving a supporter of Luis, the sheriff intervening, but the tension simmering. Luis spent the night with his family, the dinner table a battleground of emotions, his mother advocating for reconciliation, his sister mediating. He listened the internal voice urging him to weigh the good against the bad. The next morning, the main bore began, the equipment straining under the depth, the crew on edge. A heat wave hit, temperatures soaring, the work grueling, but the progress steady. Vincent worked through it, his commitment unwavering, the public support growing as more families tasted the new water. But the rival contractor returned to the petition to halt the project, claiming environmental risks, Luis countering with data and logic, the council vote splitting down the middle. In the heated debate, Luis made a stand. This town kicked me out for who I am. Now I'm offering the solution. The choice is yours, but the consequences are yours too. The vote passed narrowly, the project continuing. That night, Vincent and Luis shared a quiet meal at the motel, the conversation turning to the future. What if we try again after this? Luis asked, the question hanging. Vincent smiled sadly. I want that more than water. But the town has to change too. The awakening spread, the price paid in sleepless nights and tough calls. Luis lay awake, the key turning in the lock, the salvation close, but the heart still guarded. The drama was peaking, the decisions defining everyone involved. The climax hit on day 6, the main well reaching the aquifer, the pumps engaging with a roar that echoed across the desert. Luis stood at the control panel, Vincent beside him, the moment tense as the first full flow began. The water surged clean and abundant, the town erupting in celebration, horns blaring, people hugging in the streets. But danger struck when a section of the casing buckled under unexpected pressure, the rig threatening to collapse. Luis rushed in, directing the crew, his body in the line of fire. As he adjusted the valves, the risk real and immediate. Vincent followed, pulling him back at the last second, the two men tumbling to safety as a pipe burst, spraying water like a geyser. The town watched the rescue, the act of bravery, shifting opinions, the bigot silent for once. Luis rose covered in mud, the water flowing despite the scare, the system holding. He had saved the rig and the supply, the price a twisted ankle and a bruised rib, but the victory sweet. Vincent helped him to the clinic, the concern in his eyes deep. You could have died. Luis winced but smiled. Worth it to see the look on their faces. The doctor treated him, the room filling with visitors, the mayor included, offering a grudging apology. We were wrong about a lot of things, Martinez. The water is changing minds. Luis accepted the words, the forgiveness a choice he made for his own peace. His family arrived, his mother crying tears of pride, the reconciliation tentative but real. Vincent confronted his father that afternoon, the church leader finally listening, to stand a turning point. I won't hide anymore, Dad. The town needs to grow. The father relented, the family tension easing. As evening fell, Luis and Vincent walked to the tower, the water flowing in the distance, a symbol of renewal. They talked of the sacrifices, the betrayals, the awakenings, Vincent revealing he had filed for separation, the decision freeing. Luis shared his plans to stay longer, the bond solidifying. A tender moment followed, hands clasped, the romantic connection reigniting, without words, the emotion full and true. The town changed that night, stories of Luis' heroism, spreading the prejudice, cracking under the weight of survival. The moral dilemmas resolved in actions, the price paid, but the gain profound. Luis felt whole, the internal conflict settling into acceptance. The crisis was over, the salvation delivered, but the real work of healing just starting. The final day saw the system fully operational, the wells pumping steadily, the reservoir filling the streets alive with relief and reflection. Luis oversaw the last adjustments, the town thanking him openly, some with handshakes, others with gifts, the shift undeniable. Vincent stood with him, the public support growing as Tommy ran up hugging his father, the scene a testament to change. Luis' family hosted a small gathering, the conversations honest, the past addressed, the future open. His mother hugged him tight, the forgiveness complete. You saved more than the water, son. You saved us from ourselves. Elena smiled, the bridge mended. Luis felt the weight lift, the decisions of the week defining his path. He chose to base par of Aquacore in Rio Seco, the move a trade-off between his city life and the roots that called him back. Vincent joined him in the plans, the relationship rebuilding slow, and strong, the love enduring the tests. The town held a meeting, the mayor announcing new policies on inclusion, the water bringing not just life but growth. Some resisted, but the majority embraced the awakening real. Luis reflected on the journey, the banishment, the return, the confrontations, the betrayals, the sacrifices. He had held the key and turned it the price high, but the reward, a town reborn and a heart healed. As the sun set over the now green fields, Luis and Vincent stood together, the romantic moment full of promise, the future theirs. The story of Rio Seco was one of pain and redemption, the choices shaping everyone. Was it right for Luis to save the town that once cast him out for who he loved, or should he have let them face the full consequences of their prejudice before offering his help?